Hello, students. This is Professor Arsenault. I'm going to do a video lecture here about Chapter 15, which is about public relations. And I'm relying upon the Mendich textbook and also relying on an outside expert. You will hear from her in a moment. And I love The Office, that TV show, The Office. I'm assuming many of y'all know that as well. There's a great clip, the episode where someone has put a vulgar image, a vulgar watermark on some paper, and then Michael Scott has to apologize for it. Michael Scott makes this very, very great, eloquent explanation as to why an organization needs public relations. And I was going to start this video lecture by using a long video clip from The Office. However, the YouTube copyright police won't let me.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!
So, without further ado, let's do this video lecture. Here we go, Chapter 15. Let's do this. First, we're going to start with an introduction. This is from the textbook. Public relations describes efforts to promote goals, products, images, and ideas with the aim of creating favorable public opinion. This is a somewhat limited definition. I found a much broader definition from a textbook, a 2013 textbook, which talks about the management function that establishes and maintains mutually beneficial relationships between an organization and the publics on whom its success or failure depends. If you look at the second definition, which I prefer the second definition, and my PR colleagues prefer the second definition as well, PR is a boundary spanning function. Okay, you look at the boundaries of an organization, both the internal and the external boundaries, and always making sure that your organization is doing the best that it can and is presented in the best possible way. So according to this definition, a lot of things fall under public relations, which maybe wouldn't fall under public relations if you were just using that first somewhat limited definition. So we're going to go here with the second definition. There is a concern that public relations can turn into propaganda, especially when one point of view replaces a diversity of opinion, when dissent is not tolerated, and unethical means are used in order to justify the ends. Here we have, let me minimize myself for a moment. Yeah, we have a very famous propaganda poster from World War I. Propaganda was a very, very big part of the First World War and the Second World War. And, I guess propaganda is a part of every world war. But when communication scholars got very concerned about mass media and the messages that were being put out and the way the messages could influence people, propaganda relating to the First World War was one of the main things that they studied. So people are very, very concerned that if you're doing public relations, it does not stray into propaganda. Okay, students, at this point in the lecture, I decided to bring in some outside help, bring in an expert. I've worked in different aspects of the media. However, public relations is one area I have not worked. So I brought in an expert to talk to us about public relations and some of the functions of PR. So take it away.
Well, hello, everyone. Hope you all are enjoying this course so far. Thank you, Dr. Arsenault, for having me today. My name's Stacy Ridinger. I'm accredited in public relations. I've been working in this field for almost 20 years. I served 24 years in the Marine Corps, 15 of which doing public affairs, working in multinational and national level situations. I've worked in crisis communication. I've worked in being a spokesperson, writing speeches, media relations, as well as running a photo and video journalism team that go out and span the world. So it's very exciting to be here. After I left my time in the Marine Corps, I worked as the PR director and social media lead for the UPS store. We have over 5,200 franchises around the country. So it was very interesting to work for UPS, our publicly traded parent company. I can share details about that. And then after about a year and a half of that, I shifted into having my own consulting, writing or public relations, which spans the gamut. We'll talk about that in a bit of the different functions. And in addition to that, I'm now the executive director for Cause San Diego. We lead the San Diego Cause Conference. Our mission is to accelerate social impact. And so I'm taking all my PR, marketing, communication skills and driving them forward here to help make a better San Diego region for us. So to get started, I'd really like to dive into some details about the different functions of public relations. So let me kind of share screen here with you so you can get a look at that. Let me go in here. All right, so for public relations, to kind of before we get into some of the functions, I'd really like to share with you what is public relations. So some of you might have heard about it a little bit in different aspects, whether it be through the media, maybe on TV, or maybe even at a business that you might have worked at. Well, public relations is really a function for an organization to be able to maintain positive relationships with those stakeholders of which their survival depends. So we're there in a way to be able to help the organization both meet its business objectives, but also keeping an eye on the social and public aspects of what's taking place in society and keeping them in balance. So this could obviously lead to us being someone that's there to help with brand reputation, with helping to build and advance the credibility of the organization. And then we also even layer in and help them on the marketing function of helping to find, secure, and retain customers and other funders and investors. So to get into the details of the specific functions, so that's on that slide. A few additional ones. I know when I talked to Dr. Arsenault, there's such a long list. For media relations, we're looking often to get earned media, which means free media placements as often as possible, but we also do paid media. And we do that either on social or we might have a media partnership. At the UPS store, I worked with Inc. magazine, I worked with Entrepreneur and others in order to do paid media partnerships that really help to elevate our brand and help us reach those constituents we were trying to reach. The media relations includes also doing media interviews with your senior leadership or key experts within your organization so that they can tell the story, and being very good at helping them to prepare for that through talking points and speaking points. As a spokesperson yourself, you may be called upon to be that person to speak on behalf of your organization. And then one of my favorites is community relations on the positive side. After doing tons of crisis comm, I always love going out doing some really positive, uplifting things with community relations. If you work in this realm for PR, this is a part where you might be touching base with maybe your organization's social impact programs or corporate social responsibility programs. You get to go out and help develop those partnerships. Also, you might even be helping them with employee volunteerism or some other engagements that take place. Or you may even be going out and working with them on certain issues that are brewing that need to be stabilized and brought down so that they don't become crisis. For influencer management, I'm guessing all of you are familiar with influencers that are out there now. We hired and had them to help us to uplift our brand with the UPS store. Influencer management's an up and coming aspect of public relations. This is the piece where we're hiring outside individuals who are going to naturally do something within their daily life that might mix in our brand. And because of that, because they have 100,000, 2 million followers, that helps to boost our brand. And they actually are extremely effective. We found that to be. So it's even beyond what we do with any of our paid social media with directly paying on social to have certain content served to people. The influencers are awesome. And we also use those influencers at key events, because if we have events with an audience, the influencers actually improve our ability to get people there because they might be a fan of theirs, or they might be notoriety like that. Additionally, you may be tied into the content creation and distribution, meaning you might be working in a position where you're doing that social media management in addition to either yourself or someone on your team creating that content. We have systems in place to create the content and then figuring out those distribution channels, not just your own social channels or your own email through eBlast, but there's other ways of your content coming up and rising out of your traditional channels by like following trends and following ways that you can ride the tail of another trend, which can also elevate your brand. And these are a lot of cool creative. You have to be super creative and be very timely when you're doing that. And then the last one would be event management. You might not think public relations is in that, but quite a bit of us building awareness and support for a brand is through having events. And so we've done lots of different events. My goodness, I've done stuff at the national, international level and at the hyper local level. And sometimes we hire an event team. So we may come in on the PR side. We invite the media there. We also probably had a pretty big role in how that event was developed, but we hire another team sometimes to actually execute on the logistics. Or if you're a small company, you may be doing it all. So it just depends. All right, so we talked about the functions, and you can go out there and Google and look. There's a lot of great books about PR if you want to learn more. But one key piece I want to tie in now is public relations and ethics. So when I first joined the Marine Corps and I went to the Department of Defense School for Public Affairs, my first touch point with public affairs, I didn't realize how much power I had with the job that I had. With one click stroke, I can influence hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So with that power comes responsibility. And so when I first joined, I learned it through how the military shapes and develops content and puts information out to keep the public support for what we have going on. And then when I left the military, I learned even more about how the civilian sector does that. But one of the key things that you have to be aware of if you're working in this field is that your reputation and the work that you do is everything about your ability to be successful in this position. So if you lose credibility because you were dishonest or because you did something that went against integrity and having good ethics, then most likely you're probably going to have problems working in this field again. So it's always something that we like to reiterate. At some point in my career, I went to San Diego State, by the way. I was a master's student there, 2013, 2014. I was introduced to the Public Relations Society of America. And when I became a member, they had a list of ethical values that they really wanted us to follow. And that's what you see here on the screen. And the reason why they have us have a commitment to these is because we want to make sure that our field of work is seen as credible. We've had in the past, and you're probably going to learn in this class a little bit, that it didn't come up through altruistic means. PR was out there as a way for businesses or political figures to be able to promote themselves in ways, and they sometimes took leisure with what they wanted to do and didn't necessarily follow ethics. But now we're becoming way more aware and understanding how important it is. So the ones that we have listed here: advocacy, honesty, expertise, independence, loyalty, and fairness. All of these values kind of tie into how myself and thousands of others operate within our field. One of the toughest ones of these six, I would say, is advocacy and independence. And when I say that, for advocacy, sometimes you're going to have to go to the table if you're working in a leadership position of public relations and you're there giving the hard truth to either the COO or the COO or the CMO of that company about something that they don't want to hear. Maybe it's something about a change that needs to be made, an action step that needs to happen. You're bringing to awareness to them an issue that they just don't want to be bothered with. It's going to take up their time. So you have to be strong. And then also independence means that sometimes you have to bring up the fact that they're in the wrong and that they're doing things that are unethical or that could be considered unethical, and they need to make changes. I will tell you that PR isn't usually that lane, where you usually see a lot of that coming from the legal side. If you work in public relations, you are going to be working with legal quite a bit, because you do, in some ways, you're both trusted agents of your organization, and you're bringing forward information that on the legal side, obviously, to keep you out of jail and to keep your business on track. And then on the PR side, we're also bringing up things that could necessarily fall into that realm. So we work together. And so, yeah, so that's kind of like a really quick kind of overview of public relations.
Jumping back into the history, we're going to go all the way back to 1917, the Committee on Public Information, often known by its initial CPI. During the First World War, the United States tried to stay out of it for as long as possible. Actually, there was a period of time where U.S. companies were selling munitions to both sides of the war. How's that for a business opportunity? And then it became clear that the United States should get involved on helping out England. But there was a concern about how do we motivate the US public to become interested in this, what was perceived to be a European conflict. And the Committee on Public Information, including the 4-Minute Men, were organized to help spread a particular message. And people look at the Committee on Public Information as a way, as something that sort of pioneered some modern PR strategies, including dividing people up into demographics and the use of press release and coordinated press releases, and controlling all the different means of communication in order for the government to get a coordinated message out. Here we have a newspaper article from 1917 talking about the 4-Minute Men. These were people, I'm going to assume that they were mostly men, hence the name, who sort of were given speeches to learn so they could go around and talk at any public gathering, maybe if people are gathered in a theater or something like that, to give a speech about why the US needs to get involved, why this is not a European conflict, and why it will benefit the US public to get involved. Edward Bernays, if you can only remember one person, this is directly from the textbook. He used theories of mass psychology to sort of develop what we now understand as the field of public relations. Here's from the textbook, reading from page 288. No figure did more to shape modern public relations than Edward Bernays, who was actually a relative of Sigmund Freud. How's that for a little bit of trivia right there? Bernays saw the public as being irrational and incapable of critical thought, and he is credited with this concept of engineering consent. Engineering consent, doesn't that sound kind of Orwellian? A way that you could put messages out and get people to agree to something when their consent has actually been engineered. And one of the Freudian slip there. One of the PR techniques he came up with was rebranding things, framing, we might say, in a new light, including the use of the term torches of freedom to promote cigarettes, because tobacco companies want women to smoke, not because they believe in women's liberation, but because they could sort of greatly expand the marketplace of smokers. I thought that's kind of clever. Not that I'm encouraging smoking, but that's kind of clever, call a cigarette a torch of freedom. And organized some of the first college courses in public relations. And this book, Crystallizing Public Opinion, is one of his works. And when Stacy Ridinger, the expert who was just speaking to you, talked about the way maybe some of the people in the past who developed or used PR weren't doing it for the most positive pro-social methods, this Bernays is one of the people that she's alluding to. There's a newspaper article from 1929 talking about women walking in an Easter parade, puffing torches of freedom. So this newspaper article here shows the success of Bernays' technique, that he got the journalist to pick up his very particular and loaded phrase. The textbook talks about, on page 289, talks about public opinion polling and some of the issues associated with public opinion polling. These are often reported. I mean, these are reported all the time about whatever the issue du jour happens to be. But Mendich presents some interesting and critical ways to think about public opinion polling here, that by doing public opinion polling, you may actually be creating an opinion that doesn't exist, or cementing an opinion, or putting forth an opinion and getting people to think about something that maybe wasn't even on their mind. So do take a look at that. I thought that was interesting, some of the critiques about public opinion polling. Public relations and journalism are two different industries, but they work very, very closely together. A great many items that are in newspapers or news or TV news, whatever, a great many of those begin with pitches, where someone who does public relations develops like an electronic press kit, puts forth information, trying to get their message out. And if you are, I'm not promoting anything unethical. But if you are a PR practitioner and you can craft a story that mimics and duplicates the language of journalism so effectively, it's more likely that that person is going to cut and paste and put it into their media outlet. Responsible journalists shouldn't do this, but if you are a PR practitioner, that's what you kind of want to do. You want to give someone a story with photos and graphics and everything so nicely done that they just take it and then repurpose your message. So that's the way public relations and journalism work together. And press releases are one of the primary techniques that are used by the PR industry to get the message out. These are known in the industry as an information subsidy. You are subsidizing information for the journalist, so the journalist does not have to do that work for themselves. An information subsidy, best example of an information subsidy is a press release. The textbook also talks about pseudo events, events orchestrated primarily to generate publicity. This is not a naturally occurring event. This is something that's staged, artificial, done for the purposes of getting a lot of press attention. And we have some examples listed here. The example from 2003, President Bush wanted to declare victory in Iraq. So he's on this aircraft carrier, it was actually off the coast of San Diego. Doesn't want to say victory in Iraq because we didn't achieve victory in Iraq in 2003. And then some people would argue we never achieved victory. It's still a point of debate. The point is, this was a pseudo event that was staged as a photo op so that Bush could stand on this aircraft carrier and look very heroic with this sign that says mission accomplished. In retrospect, many people point to this as a mistake, that we did not achieve what we had set out to do by going after Saddam Hussein and taking out the Iraqi government. We didn't bring peace to the Middle East, as it were, and we did not end terrorism. So that maybe this wasn't the best pseudo event, maybe this wasn't well thought out, but this is sort of a classic example of a pseudo event. Organizations oftentimes use public relations, especially after a scandal or some type of mistake or some type of misstep. What I want to stress right here is that organizations need effective public relations at all times. Public relations is not something that you use only when you're in a crisis. Okay, if you're going to hire a PR team or put together a PR plan after a crisis, that's too late. You need to have effective public relations practitioners working for you as an organization 24/7, kind of scanning the outside world, looking for potential troubles, cultivating good relationships with journalists and with other stakeholders. So if you wait until you have a crisis and want to get PR at that point, that is too late.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!